The United States was launched into World War II following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941. That attack killed over 2,400 Americans and nearly 1,200 people were killed on the USS Arizona alone. The following day, President Franklin Roosevelt gave one of the most iconic speeches in United States history as he asked the U.S. Congress for a war declaration. While Roosevelt, Pearl Harbor, and the USS Arizona are obviously linked in many Americans' minds due to the Pearl Harbor attack and its aftermath, did you know that FDR was linked to the famous battleship nearly 30 years prior to the attack? Following the election of Woodrow Wilson in 1912, FDR became Assistant Secretary of the Navy, the same job his fifth cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, once held. While FDR was keen to follow in his famous cousin's footsteps, Theodore wasn't thrilled to see his up-and-coming relative working for the Wilson administration. The previous year, Theodore Roosevelt had launched a third-party bid in hopes of winning a third term as president. He was, of course, defeated by Wilson, though he did earn more electoral votes than his former protege, Republican President William Howard Taft. 1 year after taking the job as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, FDR traveled to the Brooklyn Navy Yard for the keel-laying ceremony of a brand-new Pennsylvania-class battleship called BB-39. Now, laying keel is the initial step in the construction of a ship, and photos of Franklin on that day show him all smiles walking down the gangplank. And this was 7 years before he was stricken with polio. BB-39 was officially christened the USS Arizona in June 1915, named after the newest state in the Union at the time. The christening ceremony for the ship also had a unique twist, as the usual practice of using a champagne bottle was partially scrapped, the reason being that the state of Arizona had passed statewide prohibition 5 years before federal prohibition would be put in place via the 18th Amendment. Some Arizonans thought that the state's namesake battleship should be christened with a water bottle instead. However, some within the Navy pointed out that the christening of a ship with water was bad luck, so they reached a compromise where both water and champagne were used. The water was taken from the Roosevelt Dam in Arizona, which was opened by former President Theodore Roosevelt in 1911 after he had authorized its construction as president back in 1903. The champagne came from Ohio. When 17-year-old Esther Ross swung the two bottles at the USS Arizona christening ceremony on June 19, 1915, only the champagne bottle broke. And while it may have seemed at the time like the ship had avoided the curse of being christened with water, the future would of course still prove to be tragic for the legendary ship. Today, the USS Arizona can be viewed at its final resting place in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where over 1,000 members of its crew were permanently entombed in 1941.